Joining us for more on this is John Spencer. Of course, he's a very well noted expert as far as urban warfare is concerned and an author. Thank you so much, John Spencer, for speaking to us here at Times Now. And let me begin with US President Donald Trump's announcement that Israel and Iran have agreed to a complete and total ceasefire to be phased over 24 hours. Do you think that this ceasefire announced by Trump will stand the test of time?
My personal opinion, and it's hard to say, war is uncertain, that it will hold. It was after a series of events, and it is normal to have these time frames, 6, 12-hour kind of where, birds are called out of the sky, troops are pulled back, where the cessation of fires winds down. And we saw that last night with Iran launching 6 salvos, supposedly after the ceasefire. But I think that we're going to hit the 12-hour mark, and I do believe that it will hold, and that the objective for Israel and the small part the United States played in setting back Iran's nuclear program was a greater good for the world and for the region. But everybody wanted to see this come to a close, and President Trump was a big part of that.
Right. The reason I'm asking you this question is precisely this, because many observers are saying that this is a farcical truce. There have been missile strikes that have continued. And how does one interpret all of this?
Sure. It was a fast developing situation. Absolutely undeniable that Iran attacked during this time frame. 6 salvos, civilians killed in Beersheba, civilian apartment complex hit. Israel did launch, rightfully so, a counterattack. President Trump was urging openly for that not to happen. They struck one radar site. But I just do it from an objective military analysis. If you look back at the Korean War, the Bosnian War, the Yom Kippur War, when there were similar 12-hour frameworks, there was absolutely activity that was going on, claims from both sides. But once the timeline was hit, there was a cease in all operations. And I think that's really where we're at, where it's confusing in the beginning. Right now you have both sides, supposedly Iran, kind of like Pakistan, is going to do a victory march saying that they achieved something. Both sides are saying that they will uphold to a ceasefire. Does look like the United States was a huge part of that. So I think that's where we're at.
Right. And, look at the kind of frustration that's reflected in President Trump's own statement that we saw a few hours ago. The very fact that he had to resort to a cuss word just shows the kind of frustration that he's, currently under, the pressure also that he's under, because the Israelis and the Iranians both don't appear to be very keen on listening to him. As I mentioned earlier, the strikes have continued. How do you interpret the statement of President Trump?
I mean, I don't get into politics. I definitely don't get into the mind of President Trump. But I think his intentions were very true. The objectives of peace through strength, the America first, the goal that everybody should agree to, non-nuclear proliferation. We don't need another terror regime with nuclear weapon. I understand he was frustrated, and it's understandable as he made this statement. He'd been a big part of bringing both to the table to stop the firing. And there was this, again, 6 salvos from Iran, Israel responding, all during this window, which it didn't say that there wouldn't be any activity. It actually said a wind down. President Trump saw that both sides' operations weren't in line with that. And so he was clearly frustrated. But I don't think it changes anything. I think the ceasefire agreement will hold. I do think this is also historical war is human. Both nations get to make their decisions, but aren't outside of the line. Both are saying that there is a ceasefire.
Right. Interestingly, you mentioned that the military objectives that Israel set out to achieve have been achieved. But what's very interesting is that a day after those bunker busters were dropped by the B-2 bombers, we saw another round of firing at some of these nuclear sites, including Fordo, that was conducted from the Israeli side. In that sense, do you think that there was something left unachieved, or has it really set the nuclear program back? Because there are also, some satellite imagery which suggests that perhaps some of that enriched uranium could have been taken out of those nuclear sites. What is your analysis on this?
Yeah, my objective analysis is you had to look at what Israel said their goal was, and goals do change with the changing environment once a war has started. They said roll back the program. the United States had stopped Iran from achieving a nuclear weapon anytime soon. Those goals were achieved. We can argue about how much enriched uranium was moved. Where is it? Is there a secret site? I mean, the loss of the nuclear scientists is pretty overwhelming as well. I don't, and even yes, when they hit Fordo after the United States bunker busted munitions because they believed that Iranians were sending somebody there to try to pick through the rubble and find or move or something, so they struck that in the continuation of their goal, which is to set it back as far as they can. It can be debated, and the United States is having briefings today to Congress to brief them on the classified information about what was actually achieved. I think with any objective open source analysis is that absolutely the program was set back considerably. Completely dismantled and destroyed? No. And this is how hard that would have been without boots on the ground. But destroyed and not anywhere to the crisis, the global crisis that most will agree, even the IAEA saying they were in violation of the nuclear proliferation, they were enriching uranium to a certain percentage, that crisis that was there is no longer there. Does it mean Iran will give up their program completely? Not necessarily, but I think just like India did after this most recent terrorist attack and that led to Operation Sindoor, I think this is a new doctrine where red lines actually mean red lines. That if Iran picks back up on its nuclear program, that Israel, for cause of a survival, and the United States will be involved to ensure that it doesn't restart at that capacity.
Right. And Israel, US, and Iran, interestingly, all claim to have won the war, but who really has gained in your view?
I mean, without a doubt, there's so much achieved by Israel and what their capabilities are, permeating or destroying the ideal that Iran was invincible. I mean, Israel for almost 12 days dominated Iranian skies, hitting what they want, when they want. United States showed strength that they will take action to ensure peace, like in nuclear proliferation. I think, again, objectively, doesn't matter whose side you're on. I don't know anything that Iran achieved, especially even with their performative attack against a U.S. base in Qatar, where they alerted 14 missiles all knocked out of the sky. Israel achieved the goal, but also, and then some, demonstrated their capability. Iran's basically weakness. We could talk about the air defense systems, everything, how far they infiltrated Iran's intelligence networks. The ability to send a text to the Iranian generals and say, hey, we need to have a meeting about Israel. And that was Israel sending the text. They believed it. So much was demonstrated and achieved, but really at the strategic level, a new red line that will actually be a red line that achieves deterrence, which is what we all want.
Right. And Mr. Spencer, you've shared an interesting observation in one of your articles stating that Iran is not Iraq, it is not Afghanistan, and this is not the same war. What leads you to make this distinction?
I mean, every variable, the context, from the intelligence that the United States went in. I was a part of the operation. I was sent on missions to look for WMDs in Iraq. They weren't there. The intelligence wasn't as solid as it had been presented. That's not the case here. The goal after we defeated the Saddam, we shifted goals to nation building, Western democracy style, hundreds of thousands of troops. I was a part of that later. I went back. None of those variables were present at the beginning of this war or even through it. While there was mention of a regime change would be good for the Iranian people, there was no mobilizing of hundreds of thousands of ground forces. There was no stated objective of regime change. Just every variable, that comparison does not work.
Right. Also, considering Iran's use of regional proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis, do you believe that any Israel-Iran ceasefire can be credible or even enforceable for that matter without addressing these regional players?
I do. Again, the hierarchy of objectives, the biggest one was this nuclear weapon, because much like other terror regimes with nuclear weapons, Iran wanted that as an umbrella for its proxies who were trying to destroy Israel through eroding them, both in actual attacks like October 7th, but also in legitimacy and everything. But this operation wouldn't be possible had it not been for what Israel has done to Iran's proxies, Hamas, it defanged Hezbollah, it defanged the Houthis. The Assad regime fell because it couldn't be supported by Hezbollah. Like, all of this led to the ability to attack the head of the snake, and the fact that these proxies have been weakened and the Iranian plan for the Middle East has been literally put into rubble. The nuclear program, the proxies didn't even come to Iran's aid, so their whole plan unraveled in front of everybody's eyes over the last 20 months.
Right. Also, we've seen the Washington Post publish an audio file allegedly featuring Mossad agents warning 20 IRGC commanders to flee Iran within 12 hours or face assassination along with their families. What should one infer from this? In your view, does this, for instance, point to a tacit understanding or back-channel talks between Israel and Iran? And was it done intending psychological one-upmanship rather than anything else?
I don't think it points to back channels. I do believe it's psychological warfare, and that was the point of it. And Israel did successfully kill over 25 senior leaders in the IRGC, the Quds Force. Every time they tried to appoint somebody during this 12 days as a new commander, that commander then was killed. That, again, was demonstrating capability paralysis in decision-making. And that message that was intercepted, I heard it, is again, historical to psychological operations, trying to increase the real fear that was already there, that these leaders in the military needed to abandon their leadership, the Ayatollah's goals as they were being destroyed. So I think that was more of a historical, psychological operation.
John Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here at Times Now.
Thank you so much.